This is the High-Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm Eric Balkman from the High-Stakes Fantasy Football Hour and the FFPC. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Balkman and the FFPC on Twitter at FFPC. Before we get into the show, I want to remind everyone that you can get a listeners-only 10% discount to RotoViz by using the code RVRadio2022. That's RVRADIO2022. Your subscription gives you unlimited access to all of the RotoViz content and tools, and it supports the podcast channel. Now, without further ado, here's the latest edition of the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. Welcome in, everybody. I am Eric Balkman from the High-Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, the Better Sports Network's High-Stakes Fantasy Football Show, and of course, the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. Follow the FFPC on Twitter at FFPC, and follow me on Twitter at Eric Balkman. You already heard, get the discount plug right now, RV Radio 2022, by subscribing at rotoviz.com. And basically, you're going to get all the RotoViz content, all the tools, and it's going to support the podcast channel. We love supporting the podcast channel because every time we do that on the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown, it allows us to not only produce more podcasts, but it also allows us to produce the best content we can with the best guests we can. And we want to introduce the next one tonight. He is a co-champion of 5 FFPC Main Event leagues. He is in the top 40 in the 2022 FFPC Main Event. The co-owner of his co-owner, John Laskowski, could not make it tonight. So he is going to do all the heavy lifting. You know him as Barney Newkirk. His official name is Christian Newkirk, but we're going to bring him on right now. It is the incomparable Barney Newkirk joining the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. Welcome in, Barney. How you doing, man?
What's up, boy? Hey, thank you, Balky. Appreciate it, man. As always, man. Nice to see you, brother.
It's good to see you. How's fantasy been treating you overall in 2022? I know you got a top 40 team in the main event, which is awesome. But the rest of your teams, both in the FFPC and elsewhere, how are they going so far? You got a lot of chances for some championships this year?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, listen, I got a lot of teams with some good depth. I'm not too worried about it. The bye weeks start now, so this is the time where it really gets good, right? Everybody gets scared, man, and I don't get scared until it's about week 8, and you're like, but. Man, I'm feeling good about this year. We drafted decently, and yeah, I got a lot of teams that I'm really excited about. One FPC team and one 2 main event teams that I'm really excited about. So we'll see where it goes.
We will see where it goes. We'll see how this podcast goes tonight. Coming up tonight, we're going to wax poetic on what's wrong with Travis Etienne, if anything. Whether Rondale Moore is ready to go on a big run for FFPC players, and much more. We'll kick things off right away tonight and talk about. I don't know if it's the biggest news around the NFL, but it's certainly among the biggest, certainly as we head into week 6. Matt Rule is out in Carolina. Steve Wilks, the defensive passing game coordinator, former head coach in the NFL in Arizona, he takes over. Baker Mayfield, we found out, is going to be out for a little while with that high ankle sprain. It looks like it's going to be the PJ Walker show until Mayfield and or Darnold is ready to take over. Barney, what changes, if any, do you see as far as how fantasy players should be concerned now that Wilks is running the show?
Well, I don't think much, man. I mean, I think it's kind of a dumpster fire there. They need to do something. I mean, McCaffrey's a start every time he's on the field. I mean, DJ Moore, you just can't start him right now. I mean, it's just horrible. Baker has done nothing. PJ Walker might give him a little spark with the feet. I'm kind of excited about that. I mean, what a bad break, though. Matt Corral going down, could have seen what he could have done with him. I just think it's just a bad luck situation. I don't feel comfortable starting anybody on Carolina right now. I mean, besides Chris McCaffrey, of course, he's a plug and play every time he's out there. But man, go out and get Sean Payton. Let's go. This is the time, right? I mean, go out and do something. This is it right now. Go get him. Go get your guy.
Yeah, Dom Capers brought the Panthers to a Super Bowl. Why can't you bring him back? He's not doing anything right now. So getting back to DJ Moore, I'm with you. I have him on a few teams. for the first time this season. I actually benched him in week 5 in favor of some better options. You haven't considered cutting him at all, have you? Because as you pointed out at the top of the show, the bye week gauntlet is upon us. Is there still some hope for more this season where he can be startable again?
Absolutely. I mean, you got to see what PJ can do. I mean, I don't think anybody thought Baker Mayfield was going to be this terrible, right? That he just couldn't make any receiver on that team a startable guy, but that's the way it is. So no, but you don't cut DJ Moore, especially in the high stakes leagues. I mean, we all got all our leagues elsewhere too, but especially in these high stakes leagues, I mean, Moore, you got to keep him. You got to see what happens. I want to see what PJ Walker can do. I'm kind of excited, for the first time. Who wants to watch the Carolina Panthers right now? I mean, not very many people, But hey, we'll see what PJ Walker can do, and maybe he can give him a spark and something new, right?
Yes, the 5'11", 212-pound, 27-year-old out of Temple, the undrafted
Temple. All right, let's go.
Yes, exactly.
Basketball school, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not a football school. I mean, I'd be remiss. I'm sure there's some Philly people watching right now saying, "Oh, Balky, what about this guy who went to Temple and had a pretty good, successful career in the NFL?" I don't know him, so my apologies. But we will see the PJ Walker show as it tips off. Here we go, coming up in week 6 with Walker. I look back on drafting season, Barn, and Travis Etienne was like a 3rd-round pick, mid to late 3rd-round pick in almost every draft. And for whatever reason, I've been saying this all season, James Robinson does not operate on the laws of normal human physics or reality. Dude crushes it as a guy who should have been terrible as an undrafted free agent on a really bad team, and he was a top 3 running back that year. Now, last couple of weeks, he's let us down a little bit, but for the first few weeks, he's been awesome. So my question here is, what do you is there something wrong with Etienne, or do the Jaguars simply prefer Robinson, who's got obviously more NFL experience? And then you look at this week, the Jaguars go to Indianapolis to take on the Colts. Etienne going to be in any of your lineups, or is it still the Robinson show for you?
I got to say it. We got a lot of stock of Etienne, man. I got him in a lot of places. I think we got him more in the 4th round, which was, I thought, dude, value, right? I mean, my goodness, he's going to catch a lot of balls. I'm not scared of Etienne. I think he's just getting going. They needed to see where he was, how he was going to fit in that offense. And, Jags are young. They're getting it together. James Robinson's the preferred 3-down back, right? He's going to get the early work. We know that. I mean, he deserves it. But listen, look what Etienne did last week. And I think that's just a preview to come, man. That's what everybody drafted him for. That's why he was such a high draft pick, because, man, he's catching balls, right? I mean, he's going to do that. And I think if the Jaguars are going to be successful, he's got to be in their plans. He's got to get the rock. He's explosive with the ball in his hands. We've seen it. He dropped a couple in the opener, and you're like, oh, man, hey, I'm good, man. The guy's an athlete. We've seen him in college dominate. We're just getting started, man. It's week 6. Don't panic, man. Stick with Etienne, man. I'm on board.
You look at it too, as you pointed out, Barney, the running back out of Clemson for Jacksonville, 10 carries, 71 yards last week. He does get 5 targets. He snares 3 of them for 43 yards as well. So all of a sudden you're looking at, almost 120 yards of total offense plus 3 catches on that. The touchdowns are going to be fluky. We understand, but I think you got to keep the faith. I don't necessarily know if I'm rolling out there every single week, but I think as a guy who has some Etienne shares, what's funny is I own Etienne and Robinson. Like when I own them, I have both of them. It's mostly dynasty leagues where I had Robinson and then I traded up to get Etienne, or I ended up getting Robinson after I already had Etienne, and I'm rooting for one of these guys to take the lead. I don't want them both successful. I want one guy taking, and I never root for injuries, but it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if the Jaguars decided to hold one of them out because of injury. But when they're both healthy, it's difficult to play both of them at the same time. I think another situation we can look at in the NFL as far as where we're rooting for one person to really take the lead, and this isn't just this year. It's been several years in Baltimore. We know how much they love to run the ball. We know how successful they've been at running the ball there, and yet we have the situation of Gus Edwards and Justice Hill, and you have Mike Davis there as well. And J.K. Dobbins is, I think, the guy that we all want to take control. Had a fantastic week 4, followed up with kind of a clunker in week 5. Now he goes to New York to take on the Giants, fresh off their victory against the Packers in London. Are you going to be rolling the dice and starting Dobbins this week after a bad week 5?
I mean, in a lot of teams, I think you got to, right? Because it's bye week, right? This is the first round of the, first week of the byes. It starts getting sketchy. Of course, you're not going to pick somebody up on the waiver wire and start him over Dobbins, right? But do you feel comfortable? No. I mean, who's comfortable starting Dobbins right now? I mean, and Lamar's looked bad for the last couple of weeks. So, but again, Dobbins is that guy that can give you, 2 weeks ago he had 2 touchdowns. I mean, he can get in the end zone. So, I mean, I'm not comfortable starting him, but I'm like, there's nobody else. If you got to play him, you're going to play him. Yeah, I mean, I'm not scared of the Giants. I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors there, man. I think I'm just not scared of the Giants. I'm not scared of their defense. Yeah, so I think if you got Dobbins, and especially if you have bye week problems, I'm playing Dobbins for sure. Yeah.
What's funny about that is the Packers were really having a pretty good day rushing the football against that Giants defense. And I know Leonard Williams wasn't out, or I beg your pardon, wasn't on the field. But you look at Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon combining for 72 yards and just 19 carries. They averaged over 5 yards a carry in that game. And even when the Giants loaded up the box with 8 players, the Packers still had some pretty good runs against them as well. So the blueprint is there for Dobbins to have a successful week 6. And to your point, think about all the running backs that are on bye this week as the byes kick off. No DeAndre Swift, no Jamal Williams. Dameon Pierce is on a bye. Derrick Henry's on a bye. And a guy who looked awesome on Monday Night Football, Josh Jacobs, he will also be out of lineups as the Raiders are on bye this week too. So I think there's a lot to, you may not have the luxury of sitting Dobbins. You look at a guy who potentially could be a 3-down back, a guy who has had some pretty good weeks already this season. I think you got to trot him out there and see what happens with it. Do you feel confident? No, but you got to feel okay with it.
You do.
Rashad Penny, Barney, is down for the year, broken fibula. And I mentioned this. I was on Better Sports Network on the Better Zone on Sunday night, and we were talking about this. It was a situation that was really muddied in drafting season where, back in the early part of drafting season in early summer, you had obviously Rashad Penny, but you had the rookie Ken Walker, and you had Chris Carson, who hadn't retired yet. And Chris Carson was still in the picture, a guy who was very successful last year until he went down. Now Carson's retired. Penny's out for the year. Ken Walker, what are your expectations for this guy on a Seattle offense that has surprised a lot of people, that's been led by Geno Smith? We'll get to him in a little bit. But Ken Walker right now, I feel like this is a guy, he's a must start given the other options that Seattle has in their backfield. You got to feel pretty good about it. He bust that big touchdown run this past week. And I think better things are there for him going forward.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah, dude, Ken Walker, he's going to be the man. I mean, he catches the ball well. I think he even catches the ball better than Penny, right? I mean, the sky's the limit for this kid. And man, like you said, Seattle. I'm one of the biggest Seattle haters of all. I am not a Seahawks fan. I bash the Seahawks. I mean,
so why? No,
you
now,
can see
now
on
this,
my social media.
Barney, this is interesting. Why are you not a Seahawks fan? Is this go to fandom for another team, or why don't you like the Seahawks?
I'm in Alaska, so I'm in Alaska right now. We're here. This is it's Seahawks country up here for the most part. Everybody that I work with is from Seattle, but man, their fan base it's a little quiet when things are going bad, and all of a sudden the old Legion of Boom thing came out, and we're here, we're back, and then they just hide in the closet. Sorry, Tara, I know you're listening, but yeah, no, it's Seattle sports, right? Hey, and I'm not bashing. I don't want to bash. They look good and very surprising, and that Geno Smith's one of the big reasons. But I'm going to go to the Seattle Supersonics. Why do you take your team away from a town like that if your fan base isn't supporting, right? I mean, I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for it, but that I live it. I grew up around it, and when the highs are high, and lows are low, they're low. So It just leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
I get it. Totally get it. And what I don't get is how I missed on Geno Smith in this Seattle offense this year, because I have Lockett in a couple of spots, Metcalf maybe one or two spots. I picked up Geno Smith and started him in week 5 because I had it was a Prescott team where I was trying to play, quarterback roulette and try to get the best matchup every week, and it worked out for me this week. But Metcalf, I think you and John have a good amount of Metcalf this year on your FFPC teams. And I'm just kind of curious, how surprised have you been to see what Geno Smith has done with this team? Or did you kind of see that, like, hey, listen, the talent is there for this Seahawks offense to still really be a fantasy asset for anybody who owns pieces of this team? And what do you think is going to happen going forward? Is this Geno Smith thing going to die off by the end of October? Is he going to keep it up the rest of the year? Because I think that's going to affect all the position players, all the skill position players on the Seahawks roster.
Yeah, no, it's all about Geno Smith and the way he's playing, right? I mean, but DK Metcalf is a physical freak, right? I mean, you're talking about one of maybe 3 or 4 players in the league with that kind of athletic build. Just like I said, just a physical freak. I mean, and when he was falling that far, I'm just like, oh, good God, can I'll take all that stock. You know what I mean? Because those guys just don't fall normally. So we were lucky. I think we got him in like 4 or 5 leagues, which is great. But man, it comes down to Geno's play, and man, he looks poised. He looks good. He's not scared. He's getting, he's staying in the pocket. He's great. And look, I mean, they got skill players. I mean, he's making Disley look good. Yeah, as a startable fantasy guy, right? So what is that saying? I mean, it's good. Lockett's man, it's not just Russell Wilson. It's those guys are good football players, and we're seeing it, and it's exciting for Seattle. Absolutely. I didn't see it coming, but man, I can see Geno Smith playing well. I mean, he's not making mistakes, right? That's what you can't do at the quarterback position, make mistakes. He's not making those mistakes. He didn't make any mistakes last week. Their defense is atrocious. Oh my God. I mean, you can't stop nobody. So again, but for a fantasy perspective, I like Seattle's offense going forward. Kenneth Walker, he's gonna be the man. There's no doubt. I'm not scared about that.
So did you and Ski pick up any Will Disley at all? I mean, tight end premium format in the FFPC Footballguys Players Championship. Have you grabbed him anywhere? Is he worth rostering?
We did, just because we never go tight end heavy, right? So we're never really get tight ends early. We're just, man, it's kind of like the catcher in baseball, right? I mean, not a lot of people play fantasy baseball because it's a grind, but man, it's hard to find those. And this year, look, who is it? It's Kels and it's Mark Andrews, and then everybody else, right? I mean, and we're talking about everybody else. Okay, yeah, Hawkins had his big day, but then he is done. Kittle hasn't done nothing. Who's Kyle Pitts? I mean, he's on a milk carton right now. So, I mean, tight ends are hard, man. I love it when I play these leagues because these guys are taking them so early, and it leaves all these good players, to pick up in the 3rd or 4th round.
Well, not only that, and I don't know how many you got of them, but Tyler Higbee wasn't going in the top, or he was barely going in the top 12. I mean, think about all those people that waited on tight end in the FFPC and stared Higbee as and he's been awesome. He's been a top 5 guy, might even be a top 3 guy this year too.
He might be the third guy, right? Njoku's up there, right?
Yep.
So but my goodness, you got Higbee in what, 11th, 12th round, in a lot of leagues. So that was kind of our plan. We got a lot of Njoku stock too because again, physical freak, right? He's got to figure it out at one point. But yeah, man, I like waiting on tight ends. It's great. I love that 1.5 because everybody gets scared. No, I got to have a top guy. I'm like, all right, man, I'll just sit and wait. So yeah, we picked up Disley somewhere, but there's a lot of Fant still there, and then they got a lot of competition there. So.
And you think about it too, this week, again, I mentioned the running backs that are on bye, but, you think about Darren Waller. I mean, he got hurt this past game, but he won't be playing this week. I know there's a few Austin Hooper teams out there. And obviously you mentioned Hawkinson. people aren't going to have him this week as well. You got to find a replacement for him. You could do a lot worse than Will Dissly. Barney, I want you mentioned Njoku. I want to get back to him in a little bit, but while we're in the NFC West, let's talk a little bit about Rondale Moore, because this is a player that I don't know how you treated him in drafting season. He was always the type of guy for me where I didn't target him. And in fact, I kind of faded him a little bit until I felt like I was kind of being a dick about it. I'm like, all right, I'm going to grab Rondale Moore now because he's fallen so far. But I wasn't necessarily excited about him because I knew DeAndre Hopkins would be back at some point. I was pretty bullish on Marquise Brown this year. And obviously, AJ Green's still there. Zach Ertz is a target monster. And you have the running backs there as well. But Moore finally, this past week had a, quasi breakout 2022 performance. I mean, he gets 7 catches, 68 yards against a pretty tough defense in the Philadelphia Eagles. Speaking of Seattle, that's where Moore will be this weekend in week 6, taking on the Seahawks. Do you foresee another type of game where maybe he gets double-digit targets, catches 6 or 7 of them, goes for 70 yards, maybe gets in the end zone? And this guy, Rondale Moore kind of, based on where you took him, you almost got to find a way to get him in your lineup this week as one of those flexes.
We talked about Seattle, right? I mean, you said it. You're playing your guys against Seattle, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. And Rondale Moore, man, he looked good. He's healthy, man. Speedster. He played like, I don't know, something 38% in the slot. I love slot receivers, man. And yeah, you play him, especially with DeAndre Hopkins coming back next week, right? So this is the time to play him. He's a must start this week in my mind. Absolutely. Playing against Seattle, who's just atrocious defensively. So yeah, 100%.
And as much as, we were singing the praises of the Seahawks offense, but if you're going to have that good of an offense where you're putting up points and chewing up yardage, that's going to put the pressure on your defense. And it's going to put them out there a lot, which is going to make that defense tired. And you're going to get into a lot of shootouts. I mean, they already had a 48-45 game against Detroit this year. I mean, that should have been the signal like, okay, who's ever playing Detroit, I should probably be deploying those guys. Who's ever playing Seattle,
right,
I should probably be deploying those guys in my starting lineup. And I think that's a good rubric going forward for those guys for sure. Speaking of receivers that are back, Michael Gallup came back. It seems like Dak Prescott has a pretty good shot of playing in week 6 as well. They already have CeeDee Lamb. I did read that Dalton Schultz re-aggravated that ligament injury in his knee, but it still sounds like he's going to play Sunday night. This is the Sunday night game in Philadelphia this week. Michael Gallup is back. Do you sneak him in as a flex player in your lineup this week? How do you sort of see him going against the Eagles this week? And remember, keep in mind, we just got done talking about Rondale Moore going 7 for 68 against the Eagles. Is Gallup going to be in that neighborhood on Sunday night?
You want to think so. I honestly don't feel comfortable starting any Cowboy right now. I mean, Tony Pollard maybe, but man, he needs a big run to make him fantasy startable, right?
Yeah.
Or a touchdown, right? He's touchdown dependent. So no, man. I mean, but again, bye weeks coming up. Gallup's going to be in a lot of lineups. But again, it's one of them things. You just don't feel comfortable, I don't think Dak's going to be back. Cooper Rush has been serviceable, absolutely, man. He hasn't lost, right? I mean, but they're not putting up big fantasy games, and I don't feel comfortable starting. I mean, Phillies, they're tough, and I'm thinking maybe 5 for 70 might be about accurate, is what I'm thinking. But man, you don't like to see that, right?
But if he does get in the end zone, all of a sudden 5 for 70 doesn't look too bad because now you're looking at a 15+ point game and then it works out. But that's again, touchdowns are unpredictable.
100%. Yeah, touchdowns are unpredictable, and man, yeah, like you might not have that choice to sit them. So this is crunch time, man. Week 6, first round of the fantasy bye weeks, man. This is where you separate the men from the boys, right?
No Devontae Adams this week on bye. No Hunter Renfrow, obviously. I mean, these guys are also on bye. Hunter Renfrow, Josh Reynolds, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brandon Cooks. All these guys are out this week. Obviously, Treylon Burks is on IR, but you won't have Robert Woods or Kyle Phillips either. Not that you were trotting them out there, but if you were, you may have to play guys like Michael Gallup here going forward. We talked about David Njoku earlier, and I look back, and I should have brought this up before the show, but I forgot to look it up. But I feel like, and you would know because you were drafting a lot of main event teams, David Njoku was nowhere close to being a top 12 tight end as far as drafts go. He was way far down there. He's looked awesome this year. He gets paid in the offseason by the Cleveland Browns. Kevin Stefanski has said, there's some games he's going to be blocking. There's some games that he's going to be catching a lot of balls. Well, it's mostly been catching balls this season. And I think the Browns are understanding how to utilize him. Tight end premium league. Is this guy just an automatic flex for you going forward, given how many targets he's getting now?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. And I mean, I was on Joku. We were on Joku. I mean, we have him in probably half of the teams we got. Like I said, the guy's a physical freak. And they're finally Cleveland. Hey, wake up! This guy can catch footballs, right? And he can be dominant. And he's done that. He's looked freaking great. I mean, you want to get 14 points plus out of your tight end. That's a win, in these leagues. So I mean, just because the tight end position is so scarce, and so absolutely. I mean, he is definitely a flex play going forward, and yeah, probably for the rest of the year. I mean, if they keep using them like they are, and thank God they are.
Barney, I want to touch on a couple of things that I know I didn't put on the rundown, but they're newsworthy. Patriots backfield, Damian Harris now expected to miss multiple games. We saw what Ramondre Stevenson did when he had the backfield basically to himself this past Sunday, 160 plus rushing yards. He looked really good, and this is a guy that was already carving in to that New England backfield. Stevenson's a must start right now going forward, correct?
100%. Yeah. John will attest to this. He's not here, but I'm a huge Ramondre Stevenson fan. I mean, this guy can do it all. He looks good. He hits the holes well. He's a bruiser. I mean, and man, couldn't play for a better coach. What Belichick's doing with these guys in New England with that offense, a third string quarterback. Look at their defense and what they're doing. I mean, yeah, absolutely, man. He's a must start, and man, you just ride that pony till she passes out for sure.
Now this is another interesting situation. I never thought we'd be talking about an RBBC in Pittsburgh, but Dale Lally, who covers the Steelers for Steelers.com, tweeted out on Tuesday that Mike Tomlin said at his presser, "We've been playing Jaylen Warren more and will continue to do so." Now, if you look back at what Jaylen Warren did in week 5, he was out there 51% of the snaps. Now, granted, the Bills were basically up by 4 touchdowns in this game before kickoff. At least that's what it seemed like. He did catch 4 passes for 39 yards. He got 24 yards on the ground. He outsnapped, out-targeted, and out-rushed, as NBC Sports Edge pointed out, out-rushed Najee Harris. This is a guy who was a first-round pick. Is this a one-off performance because the Bills were just massacring the Steelers? Or do you have to start being concerned about Najee Harris's workload? Because this is one of the things that attracted people to Harris in the first round this year, was because, yeah, he's not the most efficient guy in the world, but he's going to get so much volume that you got to find a way to get him on your rosters this year. Now, Jaylen Warren, if he eats into that, this is a huge deal for Harris owners.
100%, man. The thing about it is he's not catching balls. Najee Harris isn't catching balls. That's a big thing in fantasy, right? I mean, you want that guy that's catching balls. He did it last year. He's not doing it this year. Listen, I can sit Najee Harris right now and feel comfortable about it. I can sleep at night doing it. He hasn't done nothing. He looks like, I don't know if he's, the extra weight he's put on is hurting him. But man, you consider sitting him. I mean, Warren's getting plays. I mean, what Kenny Pickett threw 52 times this Sunday. I mean, my goodness, dude, that's cause for concern for the Pittsburgh backfield, absolutely. And Warren's not a fantasy play either. But boy, Najee is a sit right now until he can prove otherwise. And I don't know, man. It's looking pretty bad. You want him to catch at least 3 or 4 balls a game. He's not even doing that. It's very concerning. Yeah, it might be Pickett time, and it might be Pickens time. So Pickens, let's go. Let's see what these rookies can do.
And we didn't touch on this, but the offensive line has not been great for Pittsburgh either last year or this year, right? So that definitely works against Najee Harris. Harris so far this season, 222 yards rushing, which is okay, but he has not hit 20 carries in a game yet this year. He's only got 13 catches on the year. In fact, he's only caught more than 3 balls once this whole season. Against the Jets, he didn't catch any balls. So yeah, that is concerning if you are a Harris owner. So we don't want to overreact to one game essentially with the Bills just massacring them. But I think if you look a little bit below the box score and go a little bit in depth with that, you can kind of see that, yeah, okay, maybe this Warren thing is concerning going forward. I think that is the only newsy stuff I wanted to touch on with you, Barney. Yeah, I think that's it. But I do want to talk about, and this is something that I've brought up with a lot of high stakes players ever since the opening night of the season in week 1, when the Rams failed to show up for that game against the Bills on Thursday night. And quite frankly, it hasn't necessarily gotten a whole lot better for him. Allen Robinson just does not, for whatever he had in Jacksonville and that 1 year in Chicago, he just doesn't seem to have recaptured it with Matthew Stafford. Really frustrating to watch that. They can't seem to get this ground game going with Henderson and Akers. And unless, defenses are ignoring Cooper Kupp, it's been tough sledding for the Rams offense. Matthew Stafford, obviously partly to blame for that. He's made some questionable decisions with the football this year, throwing a lot of picks. You're not concerned with Kupp. I mean, he's still going to be the guy. But how concerned are you with this Rams offense as a whole going forward here, given what we've seen in the first month and a half of the season?
Oh, you're concerned. I mean, fantasy owners are concerned. I mean, Cam Akers ain't doing nothing. Did Darrell Henderson even get a carry? I don't even think he got a carry.
That might be accurate. I'm going to look that up right now.
So very concerning. And what's the story with that? I mean, that shocked me when I'm like, what? So Henderson caught a couple balls, but I don't even think he got a carry. Which, okay, what are they trying to do here? I mean, Allen Robinson obviously isn't the answer. He can't get open. He looks old. He just looks old. He can't get open. Yeah. He can't shed the defender. Yeah. It's Cooper bust, man, and Higbee, I'll give it. Higbee's been a pleasant surprise.
Absolutely.
He's getting open over the middle. He's making plays. He looks good after the ball in his hand. So, but other than that, yeah, absolutely, you're 100% concerned about that offense going forward. I mean, and I can't believe defenses aren't scheming more to take Kupp completely out of play, but. It might just be that nobody's scared of the Rams right now, and watching them, I'm not. My goodness, it's tough. It's going to be tough sledding for those guys, man. It's that division's up for grabs, and they don't even look like the front runner right now.
I'll bring this up with Higbee, and this is kind of one of those weird statistical anomalies. He is leading the NFL in targets by a tight end with 48. Yeah. He is tied for the lead in the NFL as far as catches for a tight end. He's tied with Travis Kelce with 33. Then you look at the guy who's third on both those lists, Mark Andrews. Well, Mark Andrews is second in the league in targets. He's third in the league in catches. But Andrews has 4 touchdowns. Zach Ertz has 2 touchdowns. TJ Hawkinson obviously has 3 touchdowns. Travis Kelce has 7, thanks to 4 of them on Monday Night Football. Higbee has yet to get into the end zone. And I got to believe at some point that's going to correct itself. But you're right. I mean, Higbee has been a total find this year for fantasy owners. So if you waited on tight end, like Barney has done, maybe you found your way into Tyler Higbee, and he's looking like an every week start right now. Also, to your point, no carries for Darrell Henderson this past week.
0.
The Dallas Cowboys.
Shocking.
He did get 4 catches, but yeah, no carries, was not involved in the rushing offense at all. A game that the Rams lost 22-10. So and you think about all those people that were, falling all over themselves. And this is the danger of reacting to 1 week of football. But when he was crushing it week 1 against the Bills, when Akers is hardly in there, I mean, Henderson was going as like a 7th, 8th, 9th round pick, and Akers you get in sometimes the 11th or 12th round. And now, the Akers thing doesn't look like a value anymore, but the Henderson thing looks like a massive overpay, which is why you never want to overreact to that as well. Something for a lesson for the kids out there. One final question for you, Barney, here before I let you go.
Yep.
Enjoy your October Alaskan night. One sleeper player.
That's right.
That you want to get into your lineups this week that maybe a lot of FFPC players will not be starting this week. I want to get your thoughts on that. You kind of already touched on Najee Harris. You think he's a sit right now going forward, and I'd have to look at and I should know this who the Steelers play in Week 6. But yeah, they got that tough Buccaneers rush defense this week. And
That's right. Yeah, no, he's a sit, man.
Yeah,
for sure.
He's a sit
for sure.
So we know you believe Harris is a sit. Is there also another stud player out there that, again, a lot of FFPC players are probably going to start that you would say, well, slow your roll, player. Do not start this guy in Week 6.
I mean, man, I don't know. That one's the clear. Najee's the clear.
Harris is the clear guy for you in that.
I mean, no, there's a lot of good matchups this week. I mean, I'm looking at the board and man, I like a lot of things, but man, you can't trust no Bronco right now. Yeah, you can't. I'm thinking CeeDee Lamb, man, sit him. It's another one. It's supposed to be a lower scoring game. They're in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is on fire. But again, you're not going to have that convenience, man. Week 6, it's just, I think he's just going to disappoint, and he hasn't really done much anyway. But that Philly's for real. I think, man, that team's the real deal on both sides of the field. So I sit my Cowboys.
What
if I had that option?
Right. And what's going on in Denver? I mean, is this going to improve? I mean, obviously, no Javonte Williams sucks for the Broncos going forward. But is this situation going to get better? I mean, I'm nervous about Wilson getting the shot into his shoulder to relieve pain for an injury that Dak Prescott had in 2020 or 2021, where he missed basically the entire preseason. And obviously, as Russell Wilson goes, so do the Broncos. So I mean, if you have Sutton or Judy or even Melvin Gordon or any of those guys right now, KJ Hamler in Denver, obviously Albert Okwuegbunam is kind of an afterthought there right now, but I know Greg Dulcich is coming back. I know people have been rostering him, picking him up, but man, the Broncos, not only this week, Barney, but like going forward, they're going to be a show me team where unless these guys break out, and I'll say maybe the exception to that is Sutton, because even when Russell Wilson's been bad,
that's the only
Sutton's
one.
Been okay, but that's been it.
Yeah, no, it's Sutton or busted there too. I mean, you can't feel comfortable starting anybody. I mean, if Russell was going to do something, it was last week, right? I mean, and he flopped. I mean, that whole team, Sutton maybe, but man, I don't even feel comfortable starting Sutton right now. I mean, I think Nathaniel Hackett's his coaching's been bad. I mean, his play calling's been atrocious, and that's part of the reason. But Russ ain't cooking, man. He ain't cooking unless you're putting hot dogs in a microwave, man. I mean, he looks bad. They look out of sync. They can't get nothing done. Yeah, there's no fantasy guy I'm really feeling comfortable about starting on Denver right now. Like I said, Sutton if you have to, but oof, I'm staying away. I'm out, and I don't think it's going to get better.
And that's the thing. It's just like this was totally and I don't normally like to get in these sports talk arguments here, but sports talk radio arguments, but to me, it clearly seems that Nathaniel Hackett was hired by the Denver Brass in the hopes that he could bring Aaron Rodgers with him. And once that failed, you still had hope, right? You bring in Russell Wilson with, Sutton and Judy and obviously Okwuegbunam and Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon. You had the pieces there and a pretty stiff defense,
100%.
But man, I don't think I've ever seen even in his first week as a head coach, he made a very questionable call to kick a super long field goal instead of letting Russell Wilson try for a fourth down. He backed up that after the game. He said, no, that was the right decision. Less than 24 hours later, he's like, yeah, you know what? I made the wrong decision. And then he hires not one, but two guys to help him with on-field game day decisions, which is, I don't think I've ever seen an NFL coach doing that. Kudos to him by recognizing. Kudos to him for recognizing his shortcomings as a coach. But now we're all seeing his shortcomings as a coach, right? That this guy he was pretty good in Green Bay the last couple of years, but I think Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur did a lot of the heavy lifting there. And I think he's being exposed right now. I don't know if he makes it through the season, but really difficult for me to say that he gets year 2 in Denver, and all of a sudden you're resetting everything with Russell Wilson and then that Denver offense in 2023. It's only week 6. of the 2022 season. It can get better. We shall see.
Yeah,
I know you don't think it is, and quite frankly, I'm probably with you on that. I don't see any reason to think it's going to get better for Denver going forward. But it's why we play the games. It's what makes fantasy so much fun. It's what makes this podcast so much fun, that we get to talk to a guy hanging around in the top 40 of the FFPC Main Event, a 5-time FFPC Main Event League champ. Congratulations on all your success. Good luck to you, Barney, going forward. I will certainly be rooting for you. We'll do this again soon. So much fun to catch up with you and talk fantasy football, man.
You too, Balky, man. Appreciate it, as always, man, for sure.
Absolutely.
Fighting for that million. Let's go.
You got it. You got it. The first Alaskan FFPC millionaire. Is it Barney Newkirk? You never know.
Let's go. All right. Thanks, Balky. Appreciate you, man. Have a good night, man.
Absolutely.
Yep.
You do the same. Thank you, Barney. Barney Newkirk, Christian Barney Newkirk, joining the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown this week. Talk a little fantasy football. Hopefully that helped you whet your appetite as you get set for waivers tomorrow in the FFPC, and as well as Week 6 fantasy football getting underway on Thursday night. That will complete tonight's episode. I do want to thank Barney Newkirk for joining me on the program tonight. As a reminder, tomorrow night at 10/9 Central on the Better Sports Network, I will be live with Fantasy Alarm's Howard Bender. You can obviously watch that on YouTube, on the Better Sports Network YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook channels, but I highly recommend you download the Better Sports Network app on the App Store, or in the App Store, or Google Play, so you can have a shot at winning all the great stuff that we give away. And that way you can also participate in the show, be it a chat, a call-in, whatever. It's going to be a lot of fun with myself and Howard tomorrow night. On Friday night, 10/9 Central, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour airs right here on this FFPC YouTube channel as well. We will have on Steve Tansoni, a guy who is in second place in the Footballguys Players Championship heading into Week 5. We'll pick his brain. That's going to be a lot of fun, as well as we get you set for Week 6. All those start-sit questions, all those roster questions that you have going forward, we will answer them on Friday. Don't forget to play the FFPC Weekly Challenge. No draft or salary cap in this. You just choose 10 players if you want to play in the slim format, 12 players if you want to play with kickers and defenses. By Sunday's kickoff, only one player per team. You get those in before kickoff. You can watch your team ride throughout the weekend's games. Only one player per NFL team. I want to emphasize that as well. You can play for $35. You can play for $200. You can also battle if you don't want to take on, the 100-team format. You could take on just 9 other players for $200, and the winner will take all. What will the winner take? A 2023 FFPC Main Event entry, so you can compete for $1 million next year, and you can do it by winning your league for $200 this week in Week 6. That's all available at myffpc.com. I want to wish you all the best of luck on your waivers this week. We will see you on the Better Sports Network tomorrow at 10/9 Central, and we will see you Friday night right here on the FFPC YouTube channel for the latest edition of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour with myself, Farrell Elliott, and Steve Tansoni. Thank you so much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday night. I have been Eric Balkman. He has been Barney Newkirk. We will do this again next week at 10/9 Central. Ryan Santos, a guy who's been on this program before, will join us for the next RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Enjoy your evening. Thank you for listening to the High Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. And thanks to Grapes for our theme music. Please review the podcast on iTunes under the RotoViz radio feed. It helps us find new listeners. Contact us via email, rotovizradio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear what you think, and follow us on Twitter at RotoVizRadio. And remember, you can always support the show by subscribing to RotoViz at a 10% discount through the NFL podcast homepage, rotoviz.com/podcast.